Shalom and welcome to our 26th segment of Life Lessons. We've been doing it and we started from the beginning of the 5 books of Moses. So we did the whole book of Genesis, known as Chumash Bereshit. We did the book of Exodus. And now we're in the 3rd section of the book of Leviticus, known as Chumash Vayikra. And the name of this section is called Shemini. Shemini means the 8th day. So let's talk a little bit about what's going on here and what is the lesson that we could take out from all this. The end of the previous segment spoke about the inauguration. Here we're talking about, this is after the Exodus, after the revelation of God on Mount Sinai. So God came and said, build me a place. Build me a place. And we have here the temporary sanctuary in the desert that was put together. And now they're ready to start performing all the rituals. So we have Aaron, the high priest, Moshe's brother, and his children. They are going to be the Kohanim, the priest. And for all the generations to come, the descendant of Aaron, they are the priest. The main work was when there was a temple. Now that we don't have a temple, still the idea of a priest exists, that they get special honors when we read the Torah and other things like this. But in our case over here, so there were 7 days where they were preparing themselves to how to do it on day 1. So when it comes in and says, and it wasn't the 8th day, the 8th day followed, means the 8 days following the 7 days of the preparation. So here on the 8th day, they're all ready to do it, and everyone is excited, as we see here in the Parshat. But amongst all this, tragedy happened. And that is that the children of Aaron, he had 4 children, the 2 older ones, Nadav and Avihu, it says they didn't follow exactly the rules. They brought in a foreign fire. In other places it's written they were drunk. Things out of the excitement. But what happened is, here's everyone so excited. This is the first day of the work in the sanctuary, and says the fire came down from heaven, a whole excitement, and all of a sudden these 2 boys, 2 children fell and died, Nadav and Avihu. It was a clear sign from heaven that he wasn't happy how they were mixing their pleasures or their ideas in something where there was clear instructions from God how it should be done. However, so we have a situation here. We have the father he's the high priest, Aaron, he's the high priest. Services still need to go on. And what do we do in such a case? So here we're talking about a situation where we'll soon see there was not clear instructions at this point from God how everything should be done. So there is 2 ways of understanding. There's Moses' way of understanding, and there's Aaron's ways of understanding. Let me first say in what the verses say over here, and then we'll explain it with the lesson that we could take out from this. So, so it says as follows. When it came to a certain sacrifice, Moshe wanted to know, why was it burnt? You're supposed to eat from it. He turns to Aaron and the remaining children, Elazar and Tamar. He says, why haven't you eaten? So Aaron says to Moshe, you know, we were about to do that. But look what has happened to me. You think God would have liked that I should have eaten today when I'm mourning? The verse says something very interesting. Moshe heard Aaron's explanation and it pleased him. Our sages tell us that Moshe was not ashamed to admit that he taught differently. Now, to understand is we're talking about a situation where we're trying to guess what's God's point of view. When it's clear cut, that's why I'm saying it's a very important lesson in life. Certain things in life is clear, no question about it. For some people, morality, murder, and all these kinds of things, clear cut, no question about it. It's not a doubting yes or no. But we could see that sometimes there's certain cases that are borderline. And those cases that are borderline becomes a question, what would God tell us to do? Or what should be the Jewish law regarding these things? And sometimes on purpose God didn't say, because he wants us and the rabbinical authority to be able to understand and to bring out the point and the law to everyone. So this is what's going on over here. And what's going on over here is that we see Moshe, or Moses, takes the stricter point of view. Aaron, his brother, is the less stricter point. Now let's try to understand. So first, let's understand about what the argument is about what's going on over here. When this happened, it was the beginning of the month, the beginning of the Jewish month of Nisan. Now, every month, the first of a month, there's a special sacrifice that it is brought. This sacrifice happens every month. Then there was another sacrifice that was just for the occasion, for the inauguration. So one is what we call, it's temporary. It's not going to repeat itself. These two sacrifices are known, they were goats. So let's talk about these goats. So everyone knows, and there was no question about this, that for the high priest and the priest, when something tragic happens, if he's in the middle of the service, you need to finish the service. We know that regarding so many other laws that exist. Okay? Now the question becomes a very interesting question. And this is what he says over here. God instructed them that in order of the inauguration, they shouldn't do things different. You have thousands and thousands of people are celebrating, so you need to temporarily overcome the personal loss, the personal emotions, because you are representing God now in front of all the people, and continue doing what you're supposed to be doing. And then when you're done, you could go to the mourning. That was clear if this is something about the inauguration. But here comes the interesting question. We solved one goat, this temporary goat, this has to happen. How about the one that's going to repeat itself every month? Since this is something that's going to repeat itself every month, and here I'm going to start with Aaron's thinking, very possible what God has instructed is only about the inauguration. But since the one that repeats itself next month, we're going to be doing it again, and in 2 months we'll be doing it again. So it's possible I am allowed to allow my personal mourning and to put on the side this extra holiness. Moses doesn't think that way at the beginning. And as I said before, we have nothing clear instructions from God. The only thing that we know from God is that the inauguration one, that should not be postponed. So that we know. Moshe comes and says there's no difference between temporary or the ongoing. They all represent something that we have to do for God. So if you're doing the temporary one, you must go ahead and do the regular one too. Aaron says, no, I think that God will understand and God would agree that there is a difference. There's a difference between the inaugurating one. I agree this is the inauguration. Can't postpone inauguration. However, the one that's going to be repeating itself, the continuous one, I think that personal loss and mourning should take over and should be postponed. So in the beginning, Moshe is upset. He even uses the word, he was angry. Vayiktzov Moshe. The verse says, that's what I was repeating before, he became angry with Elazar and Tamar, Aaron's surviving son. Why you did not eat the sin offering? Why didn't you do that? Aaron says to him, we did one. I did not think that what you heard from God about the temporary one also applies to the regular one. What's amazing here is the comeback of Moshe. He could have said, wrong, especially he already said his opinion. Moshe, the verse says, Vayishma Moshe. Moshe heard. He says, you know what? What you're saying makes sense. And it pleased him. To try to understand, obviously, there's something behind it, the approach of Moses and the approach of Aaron, and to try to understand. In the Psalms, in the book of Psalms, Psalm 85, there's an interesting one of the verses that says that truth and kindness met. Even as an expression, they kissed each other. The Medrash says, when God created the world, he realized that if he would create just with truth, it wouldn't last long. Because the truth means you're going to be very strict. There's no leniency. That's the truth. That's the way it is. You know, a lot of times we have that when children come and they ask us something and parents know. It's bending a little bit the rules. Bending. And you're trying to find how borderline maybe we could do something. So out of the love to the child, kindness takes over. And because that kindness takes over, so I'm not going to say the truth is thrown away completely, but a little bit of bending in the truth. All that goes the way God created the world. So it says, in front of him was truth, the attribute of truth, and then the idea of kindness. And then the verse says, Chesed ve'emes, kindness and truth meet. And when kindness and truth meet, so sometimes, in other words, the ultimate goal is that kindness and truth agree that this is the right thing to do. When we talk about kindness, from the point of view of kindness, it's very possible that some people that don't deserve kindness get kindness. Because from the point of view of kindness, you're giving. So everyone is standing in line. There's a kind individual that is giving charity, handing out, giving handouts. The idea is for those that don't have to help them out. So there's a line of people. People are standing. I'm not going to say that for 100%, but many times in that kind of a line, it's very possible there's one or two or three people that don't belong there. Kindness doesn't ask questions. Kindness is giving, so therefore everyone gets. Some people sometimes get confused and they want to say that this is the government is kindness and giving hands out to everyone, but we won't go into it. Truth, the truth yells and says, those that deserve will get, those that don't deserve won't get. So now you have two officials. One represents the truth, and one represents kindness. The one that represents the truth says, not everyone here is going to get in this line. They're going to have to fill out a questionnaire. And we're going to check everything out. And then we'll go ahead and decide who deserves and who doesn't deserve. Kindness yells and screams, you can't do that. It's a situation where people need, until you're going to figure everything out, there's good people that deserve and they're not going to get. For the few people that may get and they don't deserve, who cares? So kindness is willing to overlook. Ultimately, the idea is to find a way how kindness and truth could work together. But throughout life, we see it all the time. We see it all the time in the struggles that we have. Sometimes we have the kindness in us, and from that point of view, we have the pity and we have the mercy and the compassion for anyone out there with no limits. And sometimes the truth comes and says, wait a second. Yes, the tears are coming down, but you have to know where and what's the situation. What does that mean, Kabbalistically speaking, when they talk about these two levels? So they speak about this marriage between God and us. So we talked about it many times. God is considered the groom. Us, we're considered the bride. And that's the unity. Okay? From the point of view of God, could be, and it is, the idea of truth. And we have many verses in the Torah, in the Bible, it says God is the truth. The words of God, what could be more truth than that? So a person comes and says, it's hard for me to be involved and to do what God wants. As even in this section here, Shemini talks about the kosher laws, what I could eat, what I could not eat. It's not always easy. It's not hard. It's sometimes hard, as people say. From God's point of view, we could maybe say, God comes and says, I want you to do it. You know what? Sometimes I really don't care what your feelings are. Just do it. In other words, there is a certain aspect from God's point of view that tells us, just accept what I've asked you to do. The same as sometimes parents will tell their children, that's the way it is. As long as you live in my house, these are the rules. When you get older and you're going to have your own home, you could create different rules. But as long as you live in my house, those are the rules. We all know that. So, from one approach, God comes and says. But in the case of God, it's more than that. That's the truth. So if an individual wants to be involved with the truth, is to follow what God wants. Then comes in the aspect of the human beings. The aspect of the human beings that God created. But what did God create? He didn't create angels. He created human beings. And some human beings, and maybe some more than some human beings, have weaknesses. And the weaknesses are that it's very hard to accept the whole truth at once. This is where a representative of the people, if we could say such a thing, would plead their case in front of God and would say, you didn't create angels. You created human beings. Give them some time. You can't demand the truth all at once because it's going to backfire. They won't be able to do it. Let them start slowly. And sometimes you have to forgive. And sometimes you have to overlook. So kindness demands flexibility. And it's an interesting discussion because maybe sometimes when we see some people and maybe we gave up on them, but because of kindness and compassion, it's very possible with a lot of patience that these people have hope too and could have it turn around. We just have to be smart about it and do it with the right approach. But we could see the debate and the discussion where truth is screaming, that's the way it is. No leniency. There's nothing more to talk about. We know in our system, even here in the United States, different crimes, different things, where sometimes the individual will say, I regret it, and maybe it's for the court to assess the situation and see maybe that individual has really regretted and therefore they should get less of the time that they deserve. It's a whole discussion about this. But we could see that maybe there's place for leniency. But then there is where the truth comes and says, too bad. It's written here in the rules. You this, and this. You're getting this and this and this. Finished. Our sages tell us this was the approach of Moses and his brother Aaron. In other words, they both dare to help the people to follow God, but they both represent different aspects. Moses totally represents God. So he comes from Sinai, tells the people, this is it. This is the laws. From Moses' point of view, don't make a difference. Temporary, or it's going to repeat itself again. When we talk about something that God said, why should I think that it doesn't apply because of a certain condition or a certain situation? Does it make a difference? We're human beings. We have our shortcomings and we have our losses or whatever it might be. From the point of view of God, I said this is what you have to do, so this is what has to be done. So it's not because Moshe's lack of kindness, it is because of who Moshe represents. Moshe represents God, what we call from above. So therefore, he's come. This is what the situation is. These are the laws. And from that point of view, not necessarily there's room for leniency. Aaron's thing is to help the people to understand. Moses is bringing the words of God. But Aaron's thing is, I need to help the people that they should digest it, they should understand it. And why is it so? Because one of the things that we saw by the revelation of God on Mount Sinai, it was important to God that the people accept it, that the people understand it, and they shouldn't be just doing it because they're a bunch of robots. And that's something very important. So in other words, because it could have been, as we said many times, God says, that's the way it is. I don't care. I don't care what you think and I don't feel like, I don't care. This is what it is. But God comes and says, no, I do care. And I want that each one of us, with their intellect and with their emotions, should be able to do it. And this is where now Moses and Aaron come in. Moses is there to deliver what God said. Aaron is there to help the people to understand it and to digest it. We see, because it's written about Aaron, he used to run after peace, pursue people to do peace. This was basically his job. Aaron would hear two people fight. He would go in at length to try to figure out that they should stop fighting. Many stories about this. So Aaron represents the way human beings think. And this is exactly what's going on over here. So Moses turns to Aaron and says to him, how come the one that's going to be repeating itself, you didn't eat it and you burnt it, you didn't follow the rules about this, because Moses is with the opinion, the truth, it comes from God. Your emotions shouldn't be interfering over here. You need to set on the side your emotion. Aaron explains this to Moshe, and he says, what you heard from God is only one that's clear cut. But this that could repeat itself, we could allow the person's feeling. When Moses heard that, he says, you know what? You have a point. And that's what we have all the time, what we need to work on ourselves. There's things that are clear cut. That's no question about it. It has to be done. But in the other things where it's a little bit gray area, that's where we work on ourselves to come to the point to be able to understand what God wants from us. Until that point is we do things step by step till we get used to it, and God should help that we should be able to follow him, and then we'll receive God's compassion in return with the ultimate redemption. Thank you.